Om Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarotam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi. So in the last class, we were studying the 20, we ended with our discussion on the 24th Sutra of the 4th chapter of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So what's that sutra is? Vishesha Darshina Atma Bhava Bhavana Nivritti. So here it speaks of religion as realization. That religion doesn't lie in doctrine and dogma. It even doesn't lie on mental contemplation. All the contemplations with all the ideas that I am the conscious principle is not the ultimate goal of yoga. This contemplation is a way. It's not the ultimate goal. Many may think that just by contemplating on myself at the beginning, it's something which is not a flow. As I'm not habituated, the distractions come and breaks my contemplation. So I find that sometimes, most probably, I am getting identified with the phenomenal existence. Sometimes I come out and I can just have a flow in my mind of the thought that I am the Atman, I am the Brahman. And through gradual practice, it may so happen that the distractions fall off and my mind becomes one-pointed, constantly contemplating on my real nature. And that's the be-all and end-all of spiritual journey. Many may think that way. So here the Yoga Sutra is clearly indicating that even the thought that I am the Atman, that also has to be transcended. You have to go beyond the mind so that you realize what you are contemplating on. So that's the sutra saying, Vishesha Darshina. That those who have seen it as it is, Vishesha. There are two types of darshana. One is Samanya and another is Vishesha. What is Samanya? That wherever there is smoke, there is fire. So smoke is the Samanya darshana. Why? That previously I have experienced that wherever there is smoke, there is fire. But most probably sometimes, you know that as we were giving that example in the last class, that at the time of forest fire, most probably from a distance, in some mountains, there's a forest fire. You don't see the fire, but you see the smoke in the sky. From that, you infer that most probably there is a forest fire. So this is Samanya Darsana. You are not seeing the fire, but seeing the smoke, you infer that there is fire. But sometimes it may go wrong because there may be smoke for some other reason. Even if you find that where there is extreme pollution, the sky appears to be quite like this foggy. It appears like as if there's a lot of smoke. It has nothing to do with fire. So I may be wrong in my conclusion. So inference is not the ultimate knowledge. Ultimate knowledge is pratyaksha. So here also, at last, I have to go beyond the mind to realize my real nature. And that is possible. That's assertion we find in this sutra. Vishesha Darshina. The one who has as if realized his real nature. as a conscious principle. For him, Atma Bhava Bhavana Nivritti. That is constant flow of the thought that I am the Atman, that ceases. Nivritti means cessation of that. So this is the sutra with which we ended our discussion in the last class. So here, Yoga Sutra is taking us to that level of realization where all the thoughts ceases. You go beyond the mind, and as if to have the realization of the truth face to face. And you may say, how is it possible? Yes, as we were indicating again and again, that what's my contemplation is any spiritual journey throughout the world, any faith, ultimately, what's our spiritual contemplation? Whatever idea of divinity we may have, is there anything common in our contemplation? Everyone, in whatever form, whatever may be the mythologies, whatever may be the way of understanding the truth, can anyone say that this life is the be-all and end-all of existence, which any of the religion, any of the faith professes? No. Any faith, any religion, whatever may be the structure of thought, the basic idea is, I am the spirit. Now that spirit, maybe it's that there is something called the God. He's also spirit. Advaita Vedanta may differ. They may say that I am God. I am that absolute reality. And any the dualistic religion will say, no, I am not that God. I can never be one with God. God is the spirit. But does it deny my existence as the spirit? No. So that is the difference between Advaita and the Dvaita. That Advaita says that ultimately you are the spirit and that is one with the absolute reality. And Dvaita may say, no, that you are conscious principle, but of course, God is something which is eternally separate from you. But is there any religion which negates the idea that you are spirit? That your physical existence is the be-all and end-all of your existence? Not a single religion. Is there any religion which says that you are not the conscious principle? That the soul is is your real, is the core of your existence? No. So all the religious practice, what it leads to at last, the negation of the idea of your limited personality. Any practice. And this practice, when it enters into a state of flow, my mind has, the distractions has fallen off. It's now in a state of flow. This thought, in whatever thought process or whatever form it may be, this thought that I am the spirit, which is beyond this physical existence, that is not annihilated. This physical existence may fall off. Even as in the Hindus may believe in transmigration. The Abrahamic religions say we don't believe in transmigration. We believe in heaven or hell. After that, the death you go. But can we deny that you're the spirit? It is the spirit that is going to the heaven or hell. So everywhere we will find that there are a lot of differences. But the common thing is everyone believes that you are the spirit. So all the religious practices at last negates this limited individuality. In all the practices, is there any religion which doesn't speak of unselfishness, doesn't speak of empathy, any form of empathy, any type of unselfishness, speaks of killing this little self and finding that self-expression in all, to as if pervade it in the entire existence? Whether it is our philanthropic activities or it's our meditation, it's all at last ends up in the negation of this limited individuality. So as a result, what happens? If we are really intense in our practice, the moment you can really negate this limited I, immediately what will happen? As we have indicated again and again, all the mental modules, even in modern science, we speak of that mind is not one mind. There are innumerable mental modules. all those modules are tied up to this limited sense of individuality. This limited sense of individuality, the moment it falls off, just like the hub of the wheel, it falls off, the entire wheel is bound to collapse. If I am just trying to get rid of this each and every spikes, even if you get rid of one spike, the other spikes are there. The other spikes are there to keep the wheel intact. So it is not by getting rid of desires one by one, but by getting rid of the hub, the sense of I. And when it happens, immediately takes you to that beyond this limited sense of I, it falls off. And that's the time when it takes you to that ultimate realization. Suddenly you find that your amness is still there, but it is no more local. It is no more localized only on psychophysical existence. That amness is something which is beyond time-space causation. And it is something which is palpably realized. The mystics of all the religion certifies to this fact. They all go to the state which is eternal now, eternal present. There is no past, present, future. It is as it is. The moment it comes in association with the mind, then the projection comes into being. So here this sutra is indicating that when your Atma Bhava Bhavana, in any form it may be, that I am the self. Even in the Bible, the same thing has been told. Worship the Spirit by the Spirit. The moment you worship the Spirit by the Spirit, you negate your limited existence. And when you really are intense in your practice, that can lead to the annihilation of this limited sense of idea, of your identity. This limited sense of identity is, as long as it is there, we are hooked up with our mind, with our chitta. The moment the I falls off, you are as if beyond the purview of mind, but you are. That's the thing is very difficult to understand from the present state of existence, because we can never think anything beyond our mind and senses. But all the mystics of all the religion, of all the faith, asserts to that fact that there is a state where you can go beyond this purview of mind and senses, where still you have the sensation of amness. To give an idea that what is the difference, at present, if I close all my senses, I am kept in a room which is totally soundproof. My eyes are closed, all the senses are stopped. Immediately, one thing will happen. If we have never practiced, you will find that these external indriyas are not indriyas. The real indriyas are in the mind. They constantly need to be fed. There are so many scientific experiments, even in the modern age, scientific experiments, that if you are kept in isolation, where there is no light, no sound, it just takes 15 minutes, not more than that. You will start hallucinating, because those senses are not, the eyes are not here. It is in the mind. When you close your eyes, all the indriyas have been stopped as if forcibly. You are bound to, means however strong you may be, if you have not progressed spiritually, the senses are constantly, there's need to be fed, you start hallucinating. If by spiritual practice I have stopped to them, to certain extent I have stopped them, or just take that hallucination is going on based on what that hallucinations are going on, based on that I am seeing, I am sitting in this secluded room and seeing all those things and hearing. Not only the vision hallucinates, even you start hearing what you say, the ears also as if starts hearing so many things. These are all part of hallucination. It needs just 15 minutes. There are such chambers. In modern science, they have developed in the laboratory such chambers where no light, means total darkness, will be there and no sound can enter. It just takes 15 minutes to hallucinate. But all those hallucinations are the production of the mind, and which is all hooked to this ego. For a spiritual person who through assiduous practices went to that state, where mind is just thinking of his, what you say, that himself as the Atman, the conscious principle. Then what happens? Then when the ego falls off, then all the indriyas which are in the mind, they gets deactivated. And then what happens? That amness at present, which I find is centered here, centered in my body-mind complex, that is local. That's amness suddenly has got non-local. So two things happen when you go to that realization. One is the sense stops functioning. All the senses, even you won't hallucinate, because the real sensations are in the mind. So all the functioning of the indriyas falls off, and that amness becomes non-local. These are the two things. It's something which is a first-hand experience. Those who come back from that experience, they never say it was an imagination. It was a palpable experience, which they have experienced, but which they cannot explain. Even in the modern psychology, those who deal with that subject, they have a term for it, that everyone says that it is neotic. Neotic means that it is a palpable perception, but it cannot be explained. You know that you have experienced something. It was not mere hallucination, or it was not mere imagination. It is just like the way I see a red rose. I have perceived something, but at the same time, I cannot explain it. So it is something neotic. That's the term which they use. So that's the experience when you go there and come back. And then you will find that what has happened, that as long as you were in that state, when you come back, again, the mind, because of its old habitual state, will start thinking of God or thinking of Atman, as was your practice. You again start, but you realize for some time the mind stopped. That's the state called Savija Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Savija Asampragyata Samadhi. Not Nirvikalpa is in Vedanta. In yoga, it is called Savija Asampragyata Samadhi. Why it is Savija? Seeds are still remaining. That though you have went to that state for once, again you will come back. But you cannot go back to the ordinary life of sensate pleasures. You remain in that God consciousness. You come to that God consciousness. Now and then you go to that state where everything falls off. All the creation falls off. You are just as if floating in that amness. Again, you come back. You see the world, but the world is now totally transfigured, transformed. You see it as the projection of your spiritual entity that is being projected as the world through the mind. Just the way the light, white light passing through the prism gets projected as the spectrum, the entire phenomenal existence appears as the spectrum when the mind comes into picture. Beyond the mind, you are that spirit. And it is something, a very first-hand experience. So when that happens, when you are in that experience, the thoughts has fallen off. The thoughts takes you there, but when you are there, the thoughts are no more there. So that's the idea of realization. That's why Swamiji again and again is to stress that religion is realization. It is not mere in the doctrines and dogmas. So that's the idea which has been spoken of in the 24th Sutra, Vishesha Darshina, Atma Bhava, Bhavana Nivritti. The one who has realized the Purusha. That is the Vishesha Darshina, the one who has realized. For him, the perception of the mind as Purusha. When I'm saying, I am Atman, it is the mind who is saying. So this constant contemplation with the mind of the Atman, that ceases, Nivritti. So that's the sutra with which we ended our last class. So now let's go to the next sutra, the 25th sutra. Tada Viveka Nimnam Kaivalya Prak Bharam Chittam. It's a very interesting sutra. Once you go to that state and you come back, but now what happens when you once go to that realization of that non-local amness, where when the entire phenomenon has fallen off. Then what happens? So you have went to that state, but the vija of contemplation is still there. The seeds of contemplation is saturating your subconscious mind. So you come back. So that then when once you have went to that savija asampragyata samadhi, says tada, when you have attained that, now the mind's spontaneous inclination is towards the discriminative knowledge. It comes back again, it starts staying in that discriminative knowledge. Tada viveka nimnam. So it is coming back and again getting habituated in that contemplative knowledge. It cannot go beyond that. And this, it naturally gravitates prag bharam towards the state of kaivalya. What will happen now? To understand this sutra, let us take the states of mind. Our ordinary state you take, what it is distraction, sarvartha. So many thoughts are there, constantly getting distracted, jumping from one thought to another thought. So this mind, by gradual practice, what I can do, this sarvarthata can become ekagra. One thought. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. Today, by lot of practice, maybe I was practicing for a few months, and suddenly one day I experience that my mind has calmed down. It is focused. It's not getting distracted. It is in one thought. But you cannot continue there for long because the subconscious mind is still filled with a distraction. You find after some time, again, the distractions comes back. Again, you get distracted. Now, if you go on practicing, what will happen? This ekavritti, the state of ekagrata, will start getting more and more power. It will be prevailing your state of existence more and more. And the distracted state will be getting attenuated more and more. Why? Because your mind is getting purified. As that example which we gave again and again, that a cup is full of turgid contents. Now, as it is full to the brim, if I pour pure water in that cup, as it is full to the brim, it is bound to spill off. But as it spills off, and as I'm pouring pure water, the turgidity is getting diluted. It is spilling off, it is getting diluted. Water is becoming more and more clear. A time will come, all the turgidity has been washed away. The cup is full of pure water. So that's what happened. The distractions gradually fall off. The subconscious mind, the distractions are getting cleared off. And the mind is getting more and more saturated with this ekagra vritti. So a time will come, my mind is now ekagra. Now when that happens, what has happened? You have now totally, you have removed the hub. This hammered the hub out by when the mind has become so concentrated, it is thinking of the self. You have negated that limited sense of I now. So now and then what will happen? You will go beyond the mind. So previously the mind was like a pendulum moving from sarvarthata to ekagrata. Now it was distracted, now it was concentrated. Now the next state, what will happen? It is concentrated, now and then it is going to the state of thoughtlessness, nirodha. But now when it comes back, the mind is full of ekagra vritti, it comes back to that state. Now the swinging of the pendulum is between these two states, ekagrata and nirodha. And as it goes on, here also the same thing happens. The more and more you go to that nirodha state, that now saturates your mind. You would like to stay in that thoughtless state beyond the mind. That is saturating. Ekagra state, that will be diminishing. A time will come, this ekagra, even this ekagra chitta, this one thought, that will be totally cleansed off to take you to that state of nirodha, where you can stay as long as you want. Because ekagra vritti is no more there to break the state of thoughtlessness. You can stay in that state, totally identified with yourself as long as you want. At present, even if I go to the state of savija asampragyata, nirodha state for the first time, I will be forced to come down to the state of ekagrata. That's what has been, that state is again and again explained in all the dualistic religion as Ami chini hote China. I don't want to be sugar. I want to taste the sugar. Because it is not actually, it is their wish. They're bound, they're brought down to the state of contemplation. Though they go to that state, they again come back. Now here the question of choice comes. There are some who really want to be in this state. So they won't prefer to go to that state. Even if they go, they forcefully bring the mind down and want to remain in the state of you and me, where you is God and me is the Atman. You is not any other relation. It's God. They want to stay in that state and enjoy the bliss. But there are few who would be attempting to saturate the mind with a state of thoughtlessness, to as if merge in the absolute. So here it has been indicated that once you go to that state, now the mind will be gravitating to that state of thoughtlessness more and more. Your mind will be prone to that state of thoughtlessness more and more till the time comes when your mind is, at the beginning, it was cleansed from distraction. Now it will be cleansed from that ekavritti, that one thought of your self, the contemplation of the self. That also will be washed off gradually to make the asampragyata samadhi nirvija. As long as even a trace of the thought that I am the Atman remains, still the seed is alive. When it has been washed away totally, it becomes nirvija. You have burned out all the kleshas, all the thoughts, and whenever the thought is there, it has to be linked with some sort of desire. Even the contemplation speaks of desire, that my desire to love God, even that has been burned off, has fallen off. Then you become one with yourself. You get identified with yourself. So once you go to the state of this asampragya, the thoughtlessness once, this will now, like gravitation, it will be pulling you more and more to the state of thoughtlessness till you merge in that absolute. So that's what the sutra is indicating. Tada viveka nimnam. Once you go to that state, you come to the state of viveka. Now, it will constantly again and again take you to the state of thoughtlessness, as till you attain kaivalya. Kaivalya is a state where you don't come back to the state of thought again. You continue to remain in that state as long as you want. So that's the state of kaivalya, where you alone exist as the conscious principle by your own right. You don't need the crutch of the nature in the form of mind and senses for substantiating your identity. There's no need for that. It has fallen off. So that's what has been indicated in the 25th sutra. So now we will go to the next, the 26th sutra. Tat chidreshu pratyaya antarani samskarebhyah. It's a very interesting sutra that we have spoken of. Their mind has been cleansed off of all the distractions and it has become one-pointed. But don't be that sure. Even if your mind has become one-pointed, there are chances a few weeds in the form of desires are still remaining. Just as it happens when I go to the Bunnings or any store to buy seeds, and it is ensured that 100% are seeds, there are no weeds. And when we come and plant, and suddenly we find that in spite of all the assurances, there are a few weeds. If I'm not careful, if I don't prune them, just remove them immediately, they will spread again. And I will find that the seeds has been overpowered by the weeds. So even when I am almost sure that it is 100% pure, know it for certain, chances are there, the traces of one or two desires may be there. And that's the time we should be very, very careful. Not take it very casually, that this one or two desires which are remaining, after all, the general trend of mind is to contemplate. this one or two desires are not going to harm me. It is the thing which at last has the capacity again to overwhelm you. There are so many stories. You will find that a story of that luxury or the desires creeping in. Many have heard that story, the story of the camel. In the desert, the daytime is very hot, but the sand will be releasing the heat very quickly. So at night, it becomes extremely cold. So in the desert, daytime may be the extreme heat, at night may be shivering cold. So at night, a person with his camel, he was just with his camel was resting inside in a desert, and at night, to protect himself from the harsh weather of the extreme cold, he has somehow erected a tent. He has erected a tent, and he was quite cozy within the tent. He has lit some fire and he was cozy. And then suddenly he saw the camel outside somehow managed to poke its head inside the tent, and it asked its master, outside it is so cold, can I keep my head inside? The master says, okay. And then gradually it starts protruding inside the tent more and more. Just a little more, can I stay inside? The master thought of course, it's harmless. After all, my camel is feeling very cold. At last, it so happened that the camel entered into the tent and kicked off his master outside. So this story actually speaks of the state of our mind. There's another very interesting story in our scriptures that is called, even in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is relating this parable. This parable is called Kaupin Ka Vaste. Very interesting. That a renunciate, a monk, has renounced everything. And he was always busy he was deep in his contemplation. But now he had a problem. What's the problem? That he was a renunciate. He even didn't have these all clothes, just the loin cloth he had. The two sets of loin cloth. One he is to wear and the another he will wash the next day again. The one he has washed previous day that he will wear, he will wash the one which is wearing now. So now when he used to just hang the loin cloth for drying up, the washed loin cloth for drying up, he found now and then the rats are coming and just tearing off that loin cloth, is feeding on that loin cloth. It is getting torn. So now, of course, in the village, the villagers felt that just to give a loin cloth to the renunciate monk is nothing, just to give a small piece of cloth. So whenever he used to get torn, he used to beg for it. The villager used to provide him. So the rat was the annoying factor now for this monk. So he thought, to get rid of the rat, let me have, it is the villagers only who suggested, why not you have a cat? So they provided him with a cat. He found that that's a good idea, that to get rid of the rat, why not have a cat? So he had a cat now. So now his concern was the cat has to be fed. So he needed milk. The cat has to be fed with milk. So the villagers told, you need not worry, we will provide you with a cow. So a cow was provided. So now he needed straw to feed the cow. So now he had to get straw. So the villagers gave him a small piece of land, so where he can cultivate the livestock for this cow, the food, the fodder, whatever is required, he can cultivate there. So he started cultivating. Now he found it's very difficult to cultivate the land by his own. So he hired some laborer. So he had to build a barn to store store the crops. And now all the things became so complex. He couldn't manage by himself. So at last he married and had a wife to assist him in his household work. So everything happened with just for a loin cloth. So that's the story goes. Sri Ramakrishna very nicely is relating this story in the gospel in one of the places. So that is what is being spoken of in this sutra. Tat chidreshu. there may be a little lapse in the discriminative knowledge. Though your mind has become like a flow, maybe there's a little lapse now and then. From this little lapse, what will happen? This arise other fluctuations of mind. Pratyaya antarani. Antarani means that is going to disruptive. Pratyaya means thoughts. Those other thoughts which are disruptive to your discriminative knowledge. Though it's something very, very insignificant, it may arise because of the residual latent impressions, like weeds. Somehow it has one or two weeds have entered into the bag of seeds. That is samskara, all the residual samskara which you have, in that this few have somehow entered. So then if it is there, then what will happen? Again, it can draw you, it can just draw you down. That little lapse from that, again you will find that so many desires, just as we told, that kaupinka vaste, one desire leading to the other. Again, it may cloud your mind, and at last you may find that you are again totally entangled. Your spiritual practice is gone. So that's why we have to be very careful. As in English we say that the price of purity is vigilance. You have to be extremely vigilant. If there is a little thought for some simple pleasures of life, don't domesticate it. Just be tormented by it. This tormentation of a spiritual soul is a good sign. Just to ignore that and be happy may be the cause of your downfall again. So that's why in the 27th Sutra, what they're saying, Hanam Esham Kleshavat Uktam. As a novice, the way you were very, very particular about the small desires, that time you were exerting yourself, that whatever desires which have already manifested, let me take care of them. As we told that in spiritual journey, like any other, like relief work, we have short-term relief and there is a long-term relief. What is the short-term relief? That when there is a flood, we go, that the people who are being affected, you immediately provide food, you take them and give some shelter. But as it is a flood-prone area, you have to think of some long-term measures. That every year the same flood will be there, and we cannot just think that every year we will go with the relief. They have to have some disaster management. What's that? We go and for the long-term effect, we build houses on pillars where the ground floor, there is no place for staying. It's only the pillars. The first floor is actually the floor where they are staying. It's just not the ground floor. So like that, in the school, there is a big hall in the second floor or in the first floor where, if needed, the villagers come and have shelter if there's a flood. The bore wells in the village which they have is on the raised platform, so that when the flood is there, they still have access to the fresh water. Because if the bore well gets drowned in the water, they cannot have access to the fresh water. So it is in an upraised platform. So all these measures speaks of long-term effect. So in spiritual journey also, there are two things, short-term and long-term. The desires which are already disturbing me, they have manifested. I'm obsessed by them. Of course, as a short-term measure, I have to use my willpower to get rid of them. Because unless I get rid of them, I can never think of calming down my mind. So this is the short-term goal, to get rid of the desires which are tormenting, which are already manifested. But there are so many desires lurking in my mind which are not manifested. If they get favorable circumstances, they may manifest. Now, how to get rid of them? For them, that the long-term practice, I am the Atman. I am not the body. I am not the mind. I am not the senses. I am the pure Atman. This thought will be hammering the ego. If that is done, that is a long-term effect. That once that is done, now nothing can affect you. So the two things, the short-term, I have to, with my willpower, I have to take care of my immediate manifested desires. And for the long-term, I have to go on contemplating. So self-effort to control yourself, that willpower is also required and contemplation is also required. Both has to go hand in hand. So here what they're saying, that now when you have become habituated in contemplation, so what has happened? To exert the willpower is something of the past. That is no more required. I'm in a flow. But now if one or two desires sometimes little come, don't forget, you started your spiritual journey with both the willpower and the contemplation hand in hand. Don't forego that willpower. Again, bring it back. Use it with full strength, with full energy to get rid of that one or two desires, which though it may appear harmless now, in no time it can overpower you. So that's why this 27th Sutra is saying, Hanam Esham, all those little weeds that somehow has remained in your mind. Most of them are seeds. 99.99% are seeds, but 0.001% are weeds which are remaining. Once you find them, use your willpower, the way when you have started your spiritual journey, the way you were using your willpower to get rid of the obsessions. Again, be up and doing to get rid of these little weeds. Don't be casual about them. So Hanam, Esham, Kleshavat Uktam, as you have taken care of eradicating the kleshas as a novice. Again, with the same energy, try to get rid of all the stresses of desires that are remaining. So destruction, Hanam means to destroy. So destruction of this residual latent impression, all these little latent impressions which are remaining, which sprout in the laps of chidra, means this lapse, this chidra, this Hanam, Esham, Kleshavat, Uktam. How? That in the previous sutra they spoke of lapse, chidra. Through the lapses it may come in. So which sprouts in the lapse of this chidra of the Viveka Samskara. That has to be done in the same way we adopted while eradicating the kleshas. What all things we have adopted for eradicating the kleshas? The second chapter, if you remember, started with Kriya Yoga, the practice of Kriya Yoga. What is the Kriya Yoga? 3 practices constitutes Kriya Yoga. Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishwara Pranayama. We have studied it long back when we were studying this, where we started the second chapter. These are the practice which takes care of the kleshas. What are the kleshas? Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. There are 5 kleshas, Avidya, Asmita, followed by Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. This Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life or fear of death. These are the 3 things which motivates us to all our action. So these 3 has to be attenuated with the Kriya Yoga. How it helps? Raga is attenuated with tapa. That when I find there is an attachment, I have to practice austerity. That if I find that I am a glutton, eating too much, then of course I have to break that biological alarm system by resorting to measured amount of food, and the duration between 2 foods should be longer. The doctors will advise, the dietitian will advise me, and I have to use my willpower to resort to that new routine. When I'm resorting to that new routine, that itself speaks of tapa. How? At the beginning, it may be very difficult, but you have to exert your will. And after a few days, you will find it has become natural. Why? All this hunger, all this hunger, thirst, need for sleep are the biological alarm system. The body in the form of hunger pangs is generating an alarm to say that it's time for you to take food. Because of my old habit, the body has got habituated in taking more food. So naturally, it will give the alarm. If I, with my willpower, don't fall prey of that alarm system, the alarm system becomes inactive. After some time, it will fall off. Because it gets the feedback that alarm is not working. So what's the use of alarming him? So it falls off. And then you will find you can easily prolong the gap between 2 meals. You can reduce the food. And the more you can do that, it has a spiritual implication also. It is all these desires which is not allowing my mind to be at rest. So the tapa is allowing me to attenuate this raga, attachment. And I find now I can contemplate for more and more time. And that's the purpose of this fasting during religious practices. Why we fast? That yes, if once I take food, I will be feeling sleepy, I will be drowsy. That throughout the day, I have actually resolved to spend the time more in contemplation. It's not possible. So through tapa, what I'm doing, I am extending my spiritual practice. I can keep my mind more and more calm. The desires doesn't disturb me. And for that, the tapa is there to get rid of the attachments. Now, so there are three practices: tapa, swadhyaya, Ishwara Pranayama. Now let us take Ishwara Pranayama. Ishwara Pranayama helps to get rid of dvesha. What is Ishwara Pranayama? Resigning to the will of the divine. Once we resign to the will of the divine, the question of hating others doesn't come. This Ishwara Pranidhana is a special type of devotion. Yesterday, when we had this earthquake, after that, I was joking today that there was a forecast. What's the forecast? That there are going to be many aftershocks. And we have none of us have experienced any aftershock. But I was joking, I have experienced many aftershocks. You may say, how, Swami? How, Maharajji? In the form of traumatic phone calls. What's happening that though we say we are believing in God, but that belief is what? That my belief in God should result in all favorable circumstances. God is the means, world is the end. I want to stay in the world where there are no mishaps. It's never going to be. The real resignation is something different. That this yesterday's earthquake, a devotee will take in a different way. What way? That I was so engrossed with this life, thinking it to be the be-all and end-all of existence. God, as if with the earthquake, made me remember, anything can change anytime. Everything is so unpredictable. Never forget your real identity as a spirit, as its relation with the spirit. So what happens? My constant fear, hatred, if someone is disturbing me, my hatred for that fellow, all those things falls off because it's all the will of the God. God has willed that I should go through this suffering because it entails my spiritual illumination. I can resign more and more. I don't take all those things to be the be-all and end-all of my existence. And I understand more and more that this, as long as I'm in this world, everything is unpredictable. To give that example of that flood-prone area, that you know that when we used to go for relief in the flood-prone area, the peoples were happy. They're every time suffering from that flood, but they were happy. Why, you know? Because they knew that they're poor. Those are the place where no one is supposed to build any habitation. Just by the side of the river, government has told this is not the place for habitation, but these poor people have nowhere to go. They cannot purchase land. So knowing very well this is flood prone, they have built their houses there. And sometimes governments, seeing that the houses have been built, they don't simply run the bulldozer there because they know where these people will go. Dire poverty. So even just though they know, they feign as if they haven't seen. That's how the things go on there. But after all, flood will be there. When flood is there, we go with all our concern. Oh, people are suffering. We go and see in spite of all those things, they're all smiling. Why? Because they know they are in a place which is totally unpredictable. Flood may come anytime. Knowingly, they are staying there. If we take our existence in this world as if we are in a flood-prone area, constantly we're in a flood-prone area, we take it as if it's very safe, it is in a secure zone. That's why all the problem happen. Then we can enjoy like those people, those pure people. No one can take happiness away from them. Still they're happy. They know that if we are in the flood, someone will come, they will provide us food, the flood will go, the land will become more fertile, we will cultivate, we will have something to sustain ourselves. Because once the flood goes, the sedimentation makes the land more fertile. So that's how they stay there. They will just cultivating that land. They will get good crops. And again, they know the flood will come, but they have earned something they can manage. So they accept the fact that we are in an unpredictable area, flood-prone area. Flood will come. But for us, with millions of dollars, we have built a house, and I think now it is secured. We have actually built the house in the flood-prone area. Anytime the earthquake may be there. So the question of hatred, at last our hatred is towards God. When it happens, we say, oh, after so much of praying, devotion, nothing happens. At last I am getting all those things. So that is not the real Ishwara Pranidhana. Real Ishwara Pranidhana speaks of resigning to the will of the divine and convinced of the fact that everything happens by God's will. And when we are convinced of that fact, that is the real Ishwara Pranidhana, where we find dvesha, hatred has attenuated. So just see, these practices are very important. Tapa, these three practices, how it reduces the kleshas in the form of attachment, hatred, and extreme clinging to life. The third practice is swadhyaya. That is constantly to be aware of your spiritual dimension of existence. This japa, that I am the Atman, constantly you're repeating, this is swadhyaya. Or I am a devotee of God. God is, I am. Our relation is eternal. This world is a flow. The more you think that, the fear of death falls off automatically because you're relating more and more to the spiritual dimension. So abhinivesha, this clinging to life, that falls off. So whenever any desire comes, that little trace which is remaining, it is either you will finds expression as raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Now that it at last it boils down to these three. Either I am attached to it because my attachment to this ego, I have some attachment, or that something may annihilate my limited existence, for that I am having hatred, or too much clinging to life, that abhinivesha is there. So to get rid of these three practice, tapa, Ishwara Pranidhana, swadhyaya, which we started at the very beginning of our spiritual journey, that has to be resorted to again. Till this, you can get rid of them, attenuate them, and you can have the practice of viveka khyati uninterruptedly. Wherever the lapse is there, go and take care of it and come back to this viveka khyati, or else it may again take you back, can overwhelm you. That single little desire can again, in no time, you will find the weed has overgrown. The seeds have been totally dominated by the weeds. It may happen anytime. So be very careful that even you find a little lapse, just like a novice, just go back to your practice and take care of those little desires. At the beginning, when we say in a spiritual journey, all the small pleasures of life are okay. Yes, it's okay. Because you have now to take care of some major obsessions. At a go, you cannot think of getting rid of all. So at the beginning of the spiritual journey, just the way when a drug addict is taken to a rehabilitation center, they never say that from tomorrow itself you stop the drug totally. Their aim is to stop it totally. But what they will do, at the beginning, they will themselves prescribe drug in limited amount, and at the span between the two intake of drug will be prolonged, and the drug intake also will be reduced. A time will come when the doctor will say no more. So when we say that the little pleasures of life are okay, yes, it is okay at the beginning of the spiritual journey as a novice, because you have to take care of some very strong obsessions which are really overwhelming you. So that's little transgressions are okay. But when you have reached that state where you have went to that savija asampragyata samadhi, come back, and now you find the traces of desires are still there. Now you cannot say anymore those innocent pleasures are okay. Now you have to be very assiduous. You have to totally eradicate. So that's why this sutra comes here. Previously, they have not spoken of this much of stern measures. Now it is saying, because you are capable to take this stern measure now, you have already got rid of the majority of the desires. These little desires, now you have the capacity. Just the way a drug addict at last is told that no more compromise, total the stop of taking drugs. It comes at the last. So here also the same thing has been indicated. Now you're up to that stage. You have taken care of all the major desires previously. Your mind naturally is in a flow of viveka khyati, constantly contemplating of the divine. Now and then a little lapse comes. Now you shouldn't say that innocent pleasures, okay, it was quite good previously. Now you have to be very stern and uproot them from its very root. You have to uproot them. Otherwise, they may overwhelm you and will be the cause of your downfall. So that's the warning which has been indicated in the 27th Sutra. The 28th Sutra, we will read. We will most probably have the discussion again in the next class, the 28th Sutra. What is saying? Prasamkhyane api akusilasya sarvartha viveka khyate dharma mega samadhi. So once you have taken care of your mind, so when one becomes, then what happens? Your mind is in a constant flow. That is called prasamkhyana. Prasamkhyana is prakrishta rupena samkhya. Samkhya means knowledge. Prakrishta rupena means there is no lapse at all. Then you become, omniscient. Why? All the biases falls off. What restricts our knowledge? Previously, we have indicated that's the story of the stump. As long as we have bias, we never see the stump as the stump. In the corner of a park, in the twilight hours, the lover who is in search of his lover, of his beloved, sees it as his beloved. A small child who is in search of the mother sees it as the mother. The mother who is in search of the child sees it as the child. Police searching the thief sees it as the thief. The thief running away from the police sees it as the police. So it is our bias which doesn't allow us to see the thing as it is. So when you have reached the state of flow, when you are thinking of only yourself, contemplating the self, all the biases has fallen off, the desires has fallen off, then only you can think of that state. So what happens? Your mind, you will find, has become omniscient. It can even see the future. Why? The two things happen. That once, when I have reached that state, the bias falls off. Just as we give that example, two chess players are playing. The third one who is seeing, he can always say the correct move, because the third one who is seeing, he has nothing to do with winning or losing. So the mind is totally free. It is not occupied with the anticipation that I have to win, or it is not occupied with the fear I may lose. As it is free, it can see as it is. So it is omniscient. It can just say the correct move. That's one thing. And another thing, as your mind is free from all the so-called obsessions and desires, there is no immediacy of purpose. I have to do this now, I have to do that now. When that immediacy of purpose is no more there, the mind starts encompassing more and more of your past. You will find even in your day-to-day life, when you're extremely busy with your all responsibilities, there is no question of thinking of anything else. You're so focused on the work itself. Your mind has narrowed down to that. But when you are a bit relaxed, you're just sitting and relaxing. And then you will find naturally your mind goes to the past. In the retro, you start to see the life in retrospect. When the mind can really be free of all immediacy of purpose, when the desires falls off, it starts even seeing the past lives also. That's what we indicated, that even in the present day, there are so many courses of hypnotic. They will hypnotize you. They will take you to that state of subdue you. You become tranquil, and you will start relating to the past, even past lives. Even in your internet, you can search. You will find there are so many practices going on. It's not all that nonsense. It really has some lot of studies behind it. So here through spiritual practice, it's not that someone else is hypnotizing me to take me to that state. By your own practice, when you go, you can go recede to the past. In the life of Buddha, you will find just before realization, he had a vivid vision of the past lives. From that, the Jataka stories came. When that happens, para vairagya ensues. Para is extreme renunciation. Because we see that so many lives we have just simply wasted, thinking this world to be the be-all and end-all of our existence. With the passage of time, everything we have to leave and go. The thing which we gave so importance is of no use at last. So that when you see that it was happening life after life, you find that how you were just playing fool around of losing the real goal of life to come out of this delusion. So now that para vairagya comes, extreme renunciation. So then what happens? Then again, this unceasing discriminative knowledge, that also you want to go beyond that. That there's no need to stay with the mind. Go beyond the mind. And that ends in a stage which is called Dharma Megha Samadhi. It's a very interesting term, Dharma Megha. So previously, Dharma was something like dewdrops. Very slow change was happening. When you reach that state where you have reached the state of flow, you will find all the virtues are as if downpouring. It's as if downpouring, because there is no biases remaining to obstruct your mind. And the common example which we give in the life of Sri Ramakrishna is to say, Je nachte jane, tar bechale pa porena. As long as you are learning to dance, you have to be very cautious about each and every step, whether it is falling in rhythm or not. Once you have learned, you're teaching your students. Some music is playing on the background, you're teaching your students. You will think a wonderful thing has happened. You have become an adept. You're speaking to them. Most of the focus is on the words which you're speaking, but your legs are automatically falling in the rhythm of the music which is playing on the background. Because through practice, the dance has become now spontaneous. You don't need to focus on the dance. Your legs spontaneously falls in the rhythm. So when you become an adept dancer, তাকে মেপে পা ফেলতে হয় না, যে নাচতে জানে তার বেচালে পা পড়ে না. There's no chance for him to have a false step. It is bound to be, it has become a spontaneity. It is bound to be in the rhythm. So that's the state of Dharma Megha Samadhi, where the goodness has become spontaneous. You don't have to think what to do, what not to do. Goodness has become something spontaneous because of that transformation of the mind, where all the biases has fallen off. So it is like a downpour. Dharma Megha, like the dark clouds, it is Dharma, virtue. Virtue is as if downpouring. There is no question of taking a resolution that I have to use my willpower to be in the path of virtue. There's no more required. The virtues have become spontaneous. So that's what the Dharma Megha term means. So when you have reached that flow, then it happens. So this is the idea which we will try to understand with the help of few more examples to make it more clearer. So we will continue with the 28th Sutra again in the next class. There are total 33 sutras. With this chapter will end. And with that, the Yoga Sutra study will end. So we are almost in the end. A few more sutras are remaining. So this is the sutra which needs a little more discussion before we proceed to the next sutras. So we will take up again in the next class from this sutra, for the 20th sutra again. So thank you all. Namaskar.